The Minnesota Vikings are not happy with J.J. McCarthy. They would be happy to find an option to move on from him. General manager that drafted J.J. McCarthy is no longer with that organization. Cleveland Browns are doing an insane amount of work on Ty Simpson. Could they take him with that first pick? I mean, I don't think it's out of the question.
It is the post-combine edition of the ES DraftCast. Tony Pauline has made it back from Indianapolis in one piece, voice still intact. You were a busy gentleman during this combine.
I usually am. I was lucky to get out there compared to what happened with a lot of people in the Northeast. I found out that there were a lot of giant guys that I work with that didn't even make it out there. And I found out that some of the scouts from the Jets and Giants actually had to take a train to Baltimore, then hop on a plane to fly out to Indianapolis. A couple of guys had to get to Indianapolis through Detroit, which is unusual. And then, hit the ground running.
Some rental cars, yeah.
Exactly. There were some people who actually drove out there, I was also told. Busy Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then all of a sudden Sunday, probably shouldn't say this with the situation going on in Iran. It's like a nuclear bomb went off in Indianapolis because it's like a ghost town. I mean, Saturday's crazy, Saturday night's crazy. And then I posted a picture literally from where I was sitting watching the offensive lineman on Sunday. And the media section was 90% empty.
I was going to say.
That's the way it is. Everybody leaves. The players are done addressing the media. The combine invites are done addressing the media. The big workouts are over, and only a few fools like myself want to stick around and watch the offensive lineman work out.
Offensive lineman once again getting the short shaft on the media side,
I guess, and probably one of the most important units on the football field, which is so ironic.
Absolutely. So let's get right into what you saw in Indianapolis. First thing that came out of it, the trade came down in Indianapolis. Jets trade Jermaine Johnson.
Yep.
What do you make of all the moves that you saw and heard about around the Jets?
Well, I mean, Jermaine Johnson to Tennessee, I guess it shouldn't be that surprising. Robert Saleh is now the head coach of the Tennessee Titans. Robert Saleh was part of the organization that moved back into the first round in 2022 to select Jermaine Johnson. Jermaine Johnson looked like his career was ready to take off in 2024 before he tore his Achilles. The Tennessee Titans need an edge rusher. Obviously, Jermaine Johnson fits that system. I don't think it excludes them from taking David Bailey with the fourth pick of the draft if he's there, which I think he will be. The Jets get Devondre Sweat back after trading Quinnen Williams. They need help on the interior of the defensive line. So obviously, Jermaine Johnson doesn't fit the Aaron Glenn system. Devondre Sweat's a better fit. So I guess in that sense, the trade made sense. As far as the other moves, people are talking about Garrett Wilson, and I even wrote yesterday Will McDonald. The Jets basically moving them. I'm told it's very unlikely to happen. Teams are going to have to offer, what we call make the Godfather offer, an offer the Jets can't refuse for either of those players. I was told outright they love Garrett Wilson. I was told that they are looking more at potentially putting the fifth-year option, or whether they're going to invoke the fifth-year option for Will McDonald. And then there's the Breece Hall situation. I hope everybody watched and read on Essentially Sports, because we were on top of that starting Wednesday. The Jets want to keep Breece Hall, and they should. He's a terrific running back. If they can't get a contract done by 3 o'clock tomorrow, they will put one of the tags on him to keep him. And as I wrote at Essentially Sports, even if Breece Hall wants to leave, he can't. I mean, because the Jets want to keep him. So he's going to play 2026 under the franchise tag, or there will be an extended contract. I think that what Glenn is going to do, he's going to bring in a lot of guys that he's coached in the past. They need help at linebacker. I wrote about Alex Anzalone from the Detroit Lions potentially coming here. He is a free agent. He's one of Aaron Glenn's guys. He loves Aaron Glenn. He wants to play for Aaron Glenn. But as I said at Essentially Sports, which was later on the flight home last night, I actually read it on ESPN when I was scanning the internet on the flight home. ESPN also confirmed that a market is developing for Anzalone. So the Jets may have to overpay, or they're going to have to up their bid because now they're in a battle for the linebacker. DeMario Davis, I was told they're going to likely bring him in. DeMario Davis, what is it? He's 37 years old. But he's been in the league for like 12 years. The Jets actually were the team that drafted him into the league. Had a career best 137 tackles, I think it was last year. So as I said,
not playing like a 37-year-old.
Yeah, and as I said, as it seems to be playing out, well, as I said, the way it looks like it's going to play out, the Jets are going to spend heavily on defense to rebuild a defense that they traded away some good players in Quinnen Williams and Ahmad Gardner, and now they have to rebuild it. Last thing I was told about the Jets, which I did not write about, look for them to sign a pass rusher in free agency and then draft a pass rusher. Select a pass rusher in the draft. I could not get a grip on if they're going to use that second pick to select that pass rusher. We'll have to wait and see.
So the draft is looking heavy defense for the Jets right now.
For a lot of teams, but yeah, the Jets. Not only I wouldn't say the draft. I would say the off season. Whether that's a combination of free agency and the draft, whether that's primarily free agency with the draft filling in pieces. But right now, and again, as I wrote on Essentially Sports, the Jets are expected to spend heavily on defense in free agency, whether they still have some holes once the main part of free agency is over and they address that in the draft, except for pass rusher. I don't know. Listen, they need, they got a defensive tackle via trade. They need a pass rusher. They need linebackers. They need basically 4 players in the secondary. And again, as I wrote about at Essentially Sports, they met with every agent that has a safety which is expected to be available in free agency when they were in Indianapolis. So is going to be a heavy defense for the Jets in the draft. It's going to be heavy in the offseason. I think what they do in free agency will dictate what they do in the draft.
The other major headline to come, well, one of many, but one of the major headlines to come out of your reporting out of Indianapolis was Indianapolis and Alec Pierce and Daniel Jones. What do you think? How does this play out with Pierce and Jones and the tags and free agency?
The Colts desperately want to sign one of them to an extended contract before free agency begins, and then they will use the tag on the other one. And what I mean by that is, I think the Colts thought going into the process that they would be able to sign Daniel Jones to an extended contract. They would try and sign Pierce to a contract, and if they didn't, they would franchise Pierce. Now, what happened, and again, if you read what I've been writing on Essentially Sports, the two sides, Daniel Jones' side and the Colts, are far away from a contract. Daniel Jones, people want a lot of money. They feel they have the leverage. They feel with this quarterback class in free agency and in the draft, there's going to be a big market for Daniel Jones. The Colts thought that they may be able to get Jones a little bit less expensive because of that late season injury he had, and they're holding out that they're either going to get a big contract from the Indianapolis Colts, or they'll be able to get it in free agency, or even if they transition Daniel Jones. Because if they transition Daniel Jones, another team offers them a contract, the Colts can match it. So that's what they're betting on. So I think right now, I don't want to say there's panic, but I don't think that the Colts expected this to play out the way it did. Alec Pierce, the wide receiver, his market is a lot hotter. Or was a lot hotter at the combine than people thought. If you read my reports at Essentially Sports before the combine even started, they were talking about $27 million a year. Looks like he's going to make more than that. And, as I wrote about, the Colts are a victim of their own negligence because they could have re-signed Alec Pierce a year ago to an extended contract of about $13 million per year. Now they're going to have to pay him in the range of $27 to $28 million if they're able to keep him, which depends on what happens with Daniel Jones. Complicated situation. It's interrelated. They want to sign one before free agency begins so they can tag the other player. I'm sorry, not before free agency begins. They want to sign one before the March 3rd deadline of tagging for putting the transition of franchise tag on a player. So if they have one under contract, they can tag the other player.
Almost seems like Pierce is beyond the market having developed like it has. It feels like Pierce is monitoring that situation because he's a Jones guy, and he if he's going to be in Indianapolis, he wants to be playing with Jones.
Oh, I mean, they work well together. I was told that they get together well. Obviously, they had success last year, but money talks, and I think that the situation is with Daniel Jones right now. He's going to be looking for big time money at the quarterback position because of the weak overall class of quarterbacks in the draft, because of the weak class of free agents in the draft.
The other, the NFC North has made a lot of news at the combine, after the combine. Now, let's start with the Lions and the Texans. The Lions make a move. They trade, which was being talked about at the combine, David Montgomery. Sources saying David Montgomery's headed to the Texans, and the Lions are getting an O-lineman back in the trade along with a couple of picks.
Well, I think the bigger story here, as far as I'm concerned, is that the Houston Texans have moved 2 offensive linemen in the past 12 hours. They moved Juice Scruggs, who was a guy who saw some starting action early in his career, and they also moved Titus Howard. They moved Juice Scruggs to the Detroit Lions, and they moved Titus Howard, a longtime starter, to the Cleveland Browns. I think that's big because, again, my reporting at the Combine was that Nick Caserio, the general manager of the Houston Texans, is going to address the offensive line position through free agency as well as a draft. Well, now he has to, because he shipped off a starter, and they didn't get really all that much for Titus Howard. I thought they would have gotten more back. They shipped off Titus Howard, and they shipped off Juice Scruggs, an important backup or a good utility lineman that can play the interior position and had some starting potential or started early in his career. So as far as I'm concerned, that is the big takeaway. And it kind of goes hand in hand with what I reported there at the Combine.
And it's like you said earlier, offensive lineman, least sexy but most important. And now you got Montgomery, who's gonna block for him, who's gonna keep Stroud on his feet if they don't address this properly. So, like you said, it puts Caserio in a spot of absolute necessity rather than a want.
And it's going to be interesting to see how he approaches this during free agency. I had reported a couple times, going back to the Shrine Bowl, that Cade Mays, the center guard from Carolina, could end up with the Texans. But I also reported from the Combine that Cesario's the kind of guy, he's not going to go out and sign the big ticket item. He'll wait for those big ticket items to be signed by other teams, and then he'll look for value. There is some question as to whether or not Cade Mays could end up in Houston, primarily because his market is also growing. I had initially been told $5 to $7 million per year for Cade Mays. It now looks like $8 million or more for Cade Mays. So the Texans may take their foot off the throttle with him and basically wait for those guys to be signed. And then, as they say, pick the low-hanging fruit from whatever's left over.
Tyson Baggett, still NFC North Bears. Tyson Baggett, a hot commodity.
Backup for the Chicago Bears, a Ben Johnson favorite. There were teams that inquired if he was available on the trade market. I wrote an article back in October when I was writing for somebody else that when Caleb Williams was having his struggles early in the 2025 season, There was some thought that Ben Johnson wouldn't think twice about putting Tyson Baggett in there because he likes Baggett so much. I think with Tyson Baggett, it's sort of like what I talked about earlier with the Jets, with Garrett Wilson and Will McDonald. Someone's going to have to make a huge offer to pry Baggett away from the Bears because, as I wrote at Essentially Sports, they like their quarterback room. Johnson's a big fan of Tyson Baggett. Caleb Williams came around some late in the season. They have a veteran in Case Keenum there who they want to bring back. He's an older guy to mentor the two young quarterbacks. But again, I think that's reflective of what we talked about with Daniel Jones. It's not a good quarterback market. You're going to have two out there. You're going to have Kyler Murray out there. Malik Willis is going to be grossly overpaid. Why not see if we can get a guy like Baggett, who signed an extension last year, and move him forward and develop his game?
Feels like, just reading the tea leaves, the numbers on Willis are coming down a little bit. Seems like just the initial buzz was like you said, way overblown. It seems like the idea or the market that's developing is coming back to earth just a little bit.
Well, I guess it depends on. I mean, I would agree with that because I've got a large spreadsheet from someone in the league who does free agency, what he thought players were worth, and the Baggett contract was initially $20 million a year. It looks like it's going to be in the $30 million range. People were talking about $40 million, which to me is insane for a guy that's played.
You talking about Willis?
Willis, correct. Yeah. For a guy that's played a handful of really good games in his NFL career. I like Malik Willis. I mean, I had him rated higher than Kenny Pickett when they were both drafted. But still, to lay out that kind of money with the guarantees that he's going to get, because he played a couple of good games late in the season last year, filling in for an injured Jordan Love, it's a major risk, but that's what teams are willing to do at the quarterback position.
So much talk about backups and starters who could be backups, like or could be insurance policies, like Geno Smith. A lot of talk about Geno Smith with the Vikings now, and just as another option in pushing McCarthy.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what happens out there. I got a variety of opinions out there about J.J. McCarthy, from they're ready to move on to they're going to bring in a veteran to basically compete for the starting job. I know this. They're not very happy with J.J. McCarthy. And remember, the general manager that drafted J.J. McCarthy is no longer with that organization. So whether I don't think it's going to be a veteran to mentor J.J. McCarthy. I think it's going to be a veteran to compete with J.J. McCarthy. I can tell you this, from talking to people who are familiar with the situation, not necessarily inside the organization, the team, the Minnesota Vikings, are not happy with J.J. McCarthy. They would be happy to find an option to move on from him and get another starting quarterback, because there are major questions. Injured, it sat out his entire rookie season with an injury. Played 10 games last year, missed 7 because he was injured. Just throws too many interceptions. This is their own fault, though. I mean, I never thought that J.J. McCarthy was a top NFL prospect. I thought he was an electrifying Saturday quarterback who made too many questionable throws that were going to go the wrong way on Sunday. That's been the situation thus far. It's also, the NFL in the 2020s. I mean, if the quarterback's not performing within year 2, it's time to move on.
It feels like McCarthy was another one of these quarterbacks that was nowhere near the top of the first round coming into the combine, coming into this stretch of the grind, and then all of a sudden just kept moving up. Is it a cautionary tale for a Ty Simpson sort of move?
Well, I mean, it's apples and oranges, because J.J. McCarthy was a terrific college quarterback, a great 3-year starter at Michigan, who beat Ohio State, their arch rivals, every year he was on the field, won a national title. It's just that Ty Simpson's played for 1 year. I think when you look at the physical skills, Ty Simpson's got a much stronger arm than J.J. McCarthy. He's probably a little bit more accurate. He's better with the downfield throws, although he needs to improve in that area. My concern with McCarthy was he just wasn't a big guy. He didn't have a big arm. He made a lot of questionable throws that he was able to get away with on Saturday that he can't do on Sunday. I don't see that with Ty Simpson. The question with Ty Simpson, we'll talk about him later, is his propensity to stare down the primary target.
For sure. I was talking more just in terms of where he slotted early on in the scouting process versus where seems things move as we get closer to the draft.
Well, I mean, you talk about cautionary tales with quarterbacks moving into the early part of the draft. We could do an entire 3-hour show on that. Whether it's Kenny Pickett, whether it's J.J. McCarthy. Let's see what happens with Michael Penix. Zach Wilson, Trey Lance. I mean, the names that would be on that list are endless the past 25 years.
And yet,
Smith,
it just goes on, and yet they never learn, and
they don't.
Yeah. All right, the combine itself. There's some changes coming from what you saw and what you heard in Indy.
Well, not what I saw, basically what I was told. And there's always been rumors about the combine, changes in the combine coming. There was rumors that the league wanted to move it to a warm weather place like Los Angeles or Arizona, have it in a stadium like they do now. There's also rumors that they were going to move it on different weekends and have different positions work out. They would have the quarterbacks and receivers work out in Los Angeles one weekend. They would have the DBs work out in Miami. They would have the linemen work out in Detroit. All to market it and basically to keep that 12-month season going, to keep that that interest in it going. That's never panned out. Teams don't want that. What I'm told is very likely to happen is they're looking at pushing the combine back a week or two, right in front of free agency, so that legal tampering period can actually happen during the combine. And a lot of people like that, agents and teams. It makes sense because
everybody's there.
What's going on the past week, besides the players working out and getting medically tested, is teams are meeting with agents with respective free agents about numbers, about contracts and things like that, but you can't get any deals done. You can't get any deals done because the legal tampering period hasn't started. You don't have, we still haven't had the deadline for the franchise tags. If they move it back to say, and the combine ends, say, 2 days before free agency, and then you wedge in the deadline for the tags, that would add more excitement to it. So that looks like it's going to happen sooner rather than later. The other thing is I've been a big proponent of this, and I've talked about this in the past, is that when the players get there, their on-field work and their workouts will actually be at the beginning of the week rather than the end of the week, because players get to Indianapolis. We went through the schedule last show. I wrote a large article about it at Essentially Sports. They get there. There's 3 days of medical tests. They meet with the teams. It's just a psychological grind. And then,
and then the physical,
day, they have to, after sitting around till 3 o'clock in the afternoon, or sometimes 5 o'clock, the tight ends didn't work out till 7:30. You're asked to go out there and perform your best athletically. What they'll do is they'll move those athletic tests to the beginning of the week, and then the medicals and everything else will take place later on. Makes much more sense. I'm sure the agents will be happier with it. The players will be happier with it, rather than having to go through that physical grind of the medical exams and the psychological exams. And then the last thing is very simple. All player activities will be done by 8 p.m. I think this is basically an extension of what we saw at the Senior Bowl, where the Senior Bowl, the interviews were early in the morning. Then the practices were later at afternoon. Practice is done at 6 o'clock. Everybody was free to do what they want to, rather than having players stay up till 11 o'clock at night, do interviews with teams, and then they got to get up in the morning for medicals or workouts or whatever it may be. Or weigh-ins, I should say. The workouts don't start till 3.
So I wanted to ask you just about an article that came out. It was on then Awful Announcing picked it up. This article, an opinion from a podcaster, John Middlecoff, part of the Volume. he came out and said essentially his opinion is that in 10 years, the combine as we know it is not going to be what it is. And part of the reasoning there, part of the thought process there was that the interviews that they go through. Now, the medical's the essential part, as you said countless times, ahead of it, during it. But his point seemed to center around just the fact that the team interviews had become so canned and so um, PR machine manipulated in terms of just them practicing the answers and the teams not getting as much as they may want out of the team interview process. I mean, what did you make of that thought process that the combine itself could become irrelevant in a decade?
I mean, that's really stepping out in the branch. A decade from now, we may all be dead. I mean, who knows what's going to happen?
A lot could happen.
Well, I also read one of the reasons was that, and correct me if I'm wrong, I believe he said like 34% of the players didn't run, or up to that point, 34% of players didn't run. Listen, I remember going to go into the RCA Dome, where almost 50% of the players wouldn't run the 40. And they didn't run the 40 because the 40 track, or where they used the 40 yards for the players to run at the RCA Dome, was known as a slow track. So the players wouldn't run. I remember one, Leland McElroy, name may sound familiar to people, of running back out of Texas A&M. There were like 10 running backs who that combine chose not to run the 40. Leland McElroy got up, ran in the 4.4s, which was a really good time for running backs at the time, and scouts stood up and gave him a standing ovation because he did run. Bottom line is, I'm jabbering on. No. Do I think it's going to be irrelevant? I think it'll be changed. But the combine always has its value in the scouting process. The interviews, as much as they are rehearsed, and we spoke about it in the past, I believe it was the last podcast, on how everything's rehearsed for these guys, whether they're up at the podium addressing the media, whether they're talking with teams in behind closed doors. It's going to be rehearsed, but there are still relevant questions that have to be asked. They'll try and catch a player by surprise. The testing numbers are important as part of the process. Not overly important, not the most important, but it's important as far as the process is concerned. So no, I don't think they're going to end the combine in 10 years. Will it be different? I'm sure it'll be different. I mean, they're doing something different with the bench press this year, and it's always going to be evolving because as the players become equipped to what goes on, the league, more so national scouting, who runs the combine, we talk about the league, it's national scouting who runs the combine, will try and change it and mix it up so players have to do something different. So no, I don't believe the combine will basically end in 10 years from now.
And,
they've been talking about that for a while. They said rather than having combine, they were going to have regional pro days all over the place, and that's never come to fruition. And as long as, there's an appetite there, listen, Saturday when I was at the receiver and quarterback and running back workout, there were probably 30,000 people in the stands. So, you get 30,000 people in stands to watch guys run in shorts and a t-shirt and throw a football in shorts and a t-shirt. They're not gonna end that.
And when you talk about this idea of pushing the combine back a week and combining those two windows, the combine itself becomes even more relevant in a combined sense between the scouting and the deal making.
I don't know that it becomes more relevant. I think it becomes more marketable. It becomes more interesting because all of a sudden
more news coming out. Yeah,
you're going to see Ian Rappaport on TV more often talking about deals, and that's what the NFL Network, who's soon going to be gobbled up by ESPN, wants. They want more eyeballs. They want more people focused on it, whether it's in front of their TVs, on their phones, or whatever. So the combine itself is relevant, whatever as a standalone. I mean, it always has been. I will tell the story how first combine workout I attended was in 2001 when there was nobody there, nobody but scouts, and I snuck in. And the loudest sound in the RCA Dome was my heart beating through my chest because I knew I was going to get caught. Now things have changed. The combine's always been relevant, and I mean it will remain relevant whether or not it's mixed in or combined with free agency, whether it's a standalone event by itself, because it's part of the scouting process.
How was it for you as an evaluator this year as compared to years past? You know, we talk about it becoming more of an event, more media row action, more fans. I mean, how was it for you as an evaluator this year?
I mean, it was ironic because I thought the quarterback workout was shorter than past years. We talked about this the last podcast, how the deep outs is the money throw for quarterbacks. And what they usually do is they run the deep outs on both sides of the field. Player go up, deep out to the right, player go up, deep out to the left. And all they did it was on one side this year. So that was interesting to me that they didn't do it on both sides. It was no different. I mean, except for people clapping and cheering, especially when the Indiana players stepped up for the repetition. Listening to the people behind me, fans who, have all the answers. Not that I have all the answers, because I don't, but, listen to people talk. You just got to try and block that stuff all out and watch it. It was no different than years past.
Are you more of a breakfast guy or dinner guy in terms of fly on the wall, hearing a lot of stuff that's going on? You know, Peter Schrager came out this week and was talking about one of the hot breakfast spots there, kind of gave away some inside information. Yeah. Where do you stand in terms of you talk about working the convention center halls, but is it where you're getting your information? Is it happening more in the morning, happening more at night?
It's morning till night. Now the breakfast, I didn't hear them. I mean, was the breakfast place the Pachigo Cafe or Patago
Yeah,
Cafe?
it was. Yep.
Yeah, I'm there. I was there 3 times this week for breakfast, usually eating by myself. But no, I mean, listen, funny story from last week. Friday night, I met an agent at Capitol Grill. He said, "Here I am. If you want to come over, come on over. Somebody I know well, somebody I'm friends with." I'm sitting waiting for him to come because he was eating with another guy. Come and get me. 3 other reporters, 2 from ESPN and another guy who works locally from New York, came in to get, not to sit down and eat, but they had ordered food. And I knew 2 of the 3 pretty well. In fact, I know 1 very well. They come walking in, and then my agent buddy comes to get me. And they see, and they all know the agent. He's like, hi. He goes, "Come here, Tony." And I could see their faces because they knew I was going back there with him to hang.
Yeah.
To get kind of
what's he getting?
I don't want to give away the source, but it's information that I posted first thing Saturday morning. This was Thursday night. I'm sorry. This was Thursday. First thing Friday morning, and that ESPN confirmed on Sunday. So later on in the process, I'll mention the name of the player. But if I do now, it'll give away the source. But, to answer your question, in morning, noon, and night, whenever I can get it. Whenever I see the guys there, some people are busy. The place where that Traeger talked about is the hot spot for breakfast in the morning. Pancakes are okay. I did have some great croissant French toast while I was there. They got great coffee there, too. But, yeah, that's the place where scouts go. I see people from the NFL Network there. I saw Rich Eisen there Sunday morning. As a matter of fact, we spoke briefly because he was having his breakfast there. That is the hot spot. And the funny thing is like I talked about, I'm rambling on here because we got to get the show moving. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, you got in there. It's usually a 10-minute wait. I went there yesterday when Eisen was there, and half the place was empty.
Right.
So,
the day to go, right? The day to go to get in. Maybe not the day to go to be the fly on the wall with all the agents, but the day to go to actually get some breakfast.
And you can't be a fly on the wall in that place. You gotta because it's pretty loud. You're gonna have to basically see
You need some
somebody or
spy equipment.
read pre-game like I had at the Capitol Grill on Thursday night.
Nice. All right. Let's talk about the players. Let's talk about the actual results from the combine. In the scouts notebook. Let's start with the headliner. Sonny Styles
Right.
had the
The
big
thing is,
day. Brother had the big day.
yeah, which tells you something. I wrote about this and I spoke about this with Stephanie during one of our clips. Sonny Styles was expected to work out like this, as was his brother. I mean, there's great lineage there. They're known to be great athletes. People will woo, and this is nothing. This is not a knock on Sonny Styles. He had a terrific workout. 4.46 in the 40, 43 5-inch vertical jump, 11.2 broad jump at 6'5", 244 pounds. So you know he can put on some weight. He was good in the drills. But again, go back to what I talked about last week. The NFL Combine is about expectations. Did Sonny Styles exceed expectations? He absolutely did. But he's known to be a great athlete. I mean, he was a safety before he was a linebacker, and the lineage in the family. And then his brother comes out the next day and runs under 4.3s in the 40. Good for him. I do think it's vaulted him into the top 10 as far as I'm concerned. I didn't think he was a top 10 player beforehand. I do know that the talk at the combine, anyway, I don't know how relevant it is. The talk at the combine is he could go as early as 5 to the New York Giants, but he affirmed that he's a great athlete, and which we saw on film, which we knew about. And teams will look at, he's a good player now. With those numbers, he can be an outstanding player moving forward.
How about David Bailey? You've been, a lot of talk ahead of the combine. What'd you see from him at the combine?
4.51 in the 40. The big thing for Bailey is he measured in at 6'4", 251 pounds, which means that you see the explosion, you see the quickness, you see the movement skills. He probably can get up to 255, 260 pounds, no problem. What impressed me about Bailey was during position drills. We see David Bailey making plays up the field. We see David Bailey making plays laterally. David Bailey in position drills look very comfortable dropping into space in coverage drills. He did drop a lot of passes. He's got to work on that, but that's why he's on the defensive side of the ball. But it tells me that, if you want to run a zone blitz and you need David Bailey to drop into coverage, he showed that skill during position drills.
Ty Simpson, we talked about him earlier. Had the impressive day that folks were hoping for. What did you see from him?
Very accurate. The most accurate quarterback there as far as I was concerned. His deep outs were right on the money, and the deep outs is the money throw of the NFL Combine for the quarterbacks. Receivers weren't adjusting or stretching or leaving their feet or slowing up to catch the ball. Good speed on his passes. Can get the ball downfield. But again, as we talked about before the Combine even began, this was set up to display Ty Simpson's strengths. He's relatively accurate. He's got a good arm. The problem with Ty Simpson, as I said at the start of the show, is he tends to stare down the primary target. He was able to get away with that a bit on Saturday. Can't do that on Sunday, because you give away your throws on Sunday, you stare down the target, you're going to have a lot of passes intercepted. 6'1", 211 pounds, not the biggest guy in the world, which may raise some red flags. As I wrote yesterday, and it's since been confirmed, the Cleveland Browns are doing an insane amount of work on Ty Simpson. So let's see what the Browns do in free agency. If they answer the quarterback question at free agency with a guy like Malik Willis, maybe they look at Ty Simpson if he's there with that second pick. If they don't, could they take him with that first pick? I mean, I don't think it's out of the question.
Do you buy into this idea that and we talked about this ahead of the combine, just how that second, third quarterback, like the teams always find a way to make this about the quarterbacks, whether the grades warrant it or not. And now the talk coming out of the combine is now Simpson's maybe vaulted up to middle of the first round. I mean, do you buy into that?
Only because he's a quarterback. I think he helped himself at the combine. I don't think he the combine is really going to push him up. But again, it was well known before the combine that the Browns had an interest in Simpson. I basically reaffirmed that yesterday with where I wrote that they're doing an incredible amount of work and investigation on him. Do I buy into it? I think it could happen because he is a quarterback.
Absolutely. Mike Washington, running back from
Yeah.
Arkansas.
Washington had a terrific senior. Let's go back. Mike Washington was graded as a street free agent before the season began. He had a good season at Arkansas. He had a tremendous senior ball. I wrote about it at Essentially Sports. 223 pounds, runs a 4.33 in the 40, 39-inch vertical jump. So he has that speed. You saw it on film. He had a burst, but could he take it the distance? Can he run the daylight? He showed during the combine that he has that speed. It's just a matter of coaching him to play to that speed. Didn't do any position work. I was told that he strained a hamstring, which basically prevented him from doing position drills. As far as Washington's concerned, big deal. Go back and you watch the film. You see that he is a terrific ball carrier who can catch the ball in the backfield. That was one interesting thing. You talked about how it was for me as an evaluator. One of the changes this year that I found incredibly interesting is during the running back workout, I think they may have done 2 or 3 running back drills, ball carrying drills. 80% of the drills that the running backs did was pass catching drills. So that tells you something.
That's how the league's changing, right?
As far as Washington's concerned, somebody said he's getting late first round buzz. I think that's just talk. I think he's definitely cemented himself as a day 2 pick.
Now, if I remember correctly, he did kind of come up a little lame after the 40, right? I feel like I saw a trainer following him right afterwards.
Right, just as I said, he didn't do position drills because I was told that he had a hamstring tighten up or a hamstring strain. But like I said, big deal. All you got to do is go back and watch the film. You see how exceptional his ball carrying skills are.
So, going into the tight ends, Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon was the talk, and he kind of cemented that.
Yeah, and as well he should. As well he was expected to do. Go back to what I said about Sonny Styles. I mean, Kenyon Sadiq is known as a great athlete who has to develop his game, which he did as the season progressed for Oregon. He became a better and better player at the tight end position. 4.39 seconds in the 40, 43.5-inch vertical jump, 11.1 broad jump, 26 reps on the bench. I mean, these are Olympian type numbers. 10-inch hands, which is very important. Bigger than the 9.5-inch hands. You want those big hands to go up and grab that contested pass. He was expected to have a great workout. I think he did better than expected.
And then Xavier Thomas, wide receiver from LSU.
Xavier Thomas was estimated by scouts before the season to be a 4.5 40 guy. 4.55, 4.53. We're in a 4.28. He's a terrific receiver. Go back to what I said about Mike Washington. If you have any questions about Xavier Thomas's pass catching skills, go back and watch the film, and those are answered there. He also had a good position workout at the combine. But for him to run under 4.3 and answer the question about his speed is major. It's major, especially since that second tier of wide receivers, there's a lot of question marks. I think Xavier Thomas has stated his case to be in that second tier.
I wanted to ask you a couple questions just around some of the buzz coming out of the measurements. First one would be Ruben Bain and the hands and the 30.5 and I mean this is not new information per se, right? Like how much do you think that impacts him?
Well, I don't know that it's old information because Bain's an underclassman, so there were he never took part in junior timing day last year. I mean, I don't think it's as important for a defensive lineman to have smaller arms than it is an offensive lineman. You're right. I mean, there were always questions about Ruben Bain's arm length. Cassius Howell of Texas A&M is another guy who had really small arms. I mean, the arm length is important. You want to be able to use that arm length to keep the blockers off of you. You want to be able to get those arms up to knock passes away if you can't get to the passer. I don't think anybody's going to knock Ruben Bain down a half a round because he's got short arms. Or I don't think anyone's saying, well, Ruben Bain can't play defensive end now. He's got to stand over tackle because of short arms. It's a talking point. People will talk to it, ad nauseum. It will be important to some teams in the overall scope for Ruben Bain and Cassius Howell. I don't know that it's a defining moment that's really going to push him down draft boards or make him change positions.
The other thing that I want to just get your take on is, there was some buzz around an insider reporting on Carnell Tate and how teams had different measurements than the official measurements in terms of his 40. That seemed bizarre to me. It seems like you could say that just about any player, but we're going with the official measurement.
Well, it's not bizarre. I mean, it's always been like that.
It's buzz.
I mean, if you watch, I mean, there were scouts from different teams in the stands at the 10-yard split, at the 10-yard marker, the 20-yard marker, and the 40-yard marker. And they have their master report sheets, and they put it down. And teams will usually go by what their stopwatch says. They'll look at the electronic timing. I did not read that article, but the teams will always go by what they have. It's always been like that. It's always been like that. It's like that at pro days as well. Teams go by what their scout has on their stopwatch as far as what they're going to put down in the mark for that player. I mean, it doesn't surprise me. I didn't read the article. What did the official? What did they say the scouts had on Carnell Tate?
It was probably, this was ESPN. It was probably 0.15 faster than what the official measurement was.
Oh, so they're saying that he ran I guess close to a 4.4 flat.
Yeah.
I think he ran a 4.54. We'll see at pro day. We'll see what happens. I'm sure he's going to run again at pro day. But teams will go by what their scouts had. And you know what? One scout could have had a 4.4 for Carnell Tate. And then another scout could have had a 4.55 for Carnell Tate. That's the way it is. It's not an exact science. I mean, the electronic timing is more exact, although that can change because sometimes the wire doesn't trip when the player leaves the starting block, and it could be a little bit faster than expected. The times are all over the place. I mean, it's important to get a time. He didn't run a 4.6. He ran under a 4.55, which is important. You're not looking at Carnell Tate as a vertical receiver.
I was going to say that to begin with. That's what I didn't understand about the story to begin with, because we weren't looking at him as for the speed to begin with. So,
right.
Why even have the official measurement if all the teams have their own stopwatches?
Well, you're talking about official times, not official measurements.
Yeah, I mean, the time.
Official measurements is something we have to go by. Well, I mean, they want an electronic time. And they'll get electronic splits for both runs, assuming a player runs both times, for the 10 and the 20, and they will, as well as the 40, and then they'll measure it up to compare to what they have. It's funny you say official measurements.
It's fascinating in terms of how the measurements come down. In terms of the one other thing I want to ask you about real quick was how much leaks out, or how much do you hear about the interviews themselves? How much information gets out there about? I mean, I feel like I didn't hear as much this year in terms of this guy had a great interview versus that guy had a great interview. I didn't hear a whole lot of buzz coming out of the interview process.
Because it's only Monday, so the combine just ended. So I think as the days and weeks go by, we'll hear more and more of that leak out, and as we get closer to April, we'll hear more and more about the medical results, if there's anything that's going to leak out.
Fair enough. We mentioned Kenyon Sadiq earlier. Coming out of the tight ends workout, is he the only first round tight end prospect? He was coming in. Is that still where you feel like things stand?
I'd be shocked if any other tight end gets into the first round. I think Eli Stowers of Vanderbilt had an outstanding tight end, had an outstanding workout. Ran probably faster than expected. I'm looking at he was expected to be, or he was estimated to be a 4.65 guy. Runs in the low 4.5s. Jumped through the roof at Lucas Oil Stadium. I don't think it's enough to push him into the first round. He's helped his draft stock because there were questions about his 40 time, but still, I think Sadiq is the only true first round tight end.
In terms of, we talked about the Browns, and you talked about them doing a lot of work on Simpson. They also met with Beck and Drew Alar. Is that a smoke screen, or they just doing due diligence on all the quarterbacks in a weak class?
Listen, go back to what I said in the last podcast. Neither Carson Beck or Drew Alar were at the Senior Bowl or Shrine Bowl, which meant that no one had a chance to interview him there. So this was their chance to be interviewed by teams. And I'm sure there were a lot more teams interviewing Carson Beck and Drew Alar than just the Cleveland Browns. I wouldn't read anything into it. Like you said, I think it's more their due diligence at the position. Obviously, they need a quarterback. This was their first chance to meet those quarterbacks face to face. It's just normal.
Fair enough. Lot of talk about the numbers. A lot of talk about, especially the 40 numbers, but obviously, all the measurements. We saw some eye-popping numbers. Do you feel like this was the most athletic draft class in history, if not recent history?
I'm not going to go that far, but it was, it was one of the fastest class and one of the most athletic classes that we've seen in a long time. Was it the most ever? I mean, I don't know about that, but the fact is this. I mean, it's just a natural progression. Athletes are getting bigger and faster, and then you also have targeted training for these guys to maximize their performances in the 40, in the vertical jump, in the 3-cone, things like that. So it's a perfect mesh of athletes in general becoming faster, bigger, stronger, as well as the targeted training. Obviously, the numbers speak for themselves. Now they have to translate those numbers onto the football field and run those times on the football field and, do those things, turn it into production.
How does that? Obviously, like you said, athletes becoming stronger, quicker, faster. But how does that in terms of what we thought about this draft class versus other draft classes? I mean, was there any draft class that you'd put a comp to, just in terms of how the measurements, how the numbers played out?
I haven't looked at it, and I would say no. I mean, we thought of this as a very average draft class, especially at the top. These numbers are not really going to move the needle all that much because you don't have players at priority positions, left tackle, cornerback, defensive tackle at the top of the draft, and it's going to remain like that.
All right, let's get to the mailbag. First question today. And again, appreciate y'all getting in your questions. Also want to just alert you to the Tony Pauline, the 2006 NFL Draft Board. Obviously going to be some movement, Tony's got obviously a lot of work coming out of the combine. Catch all of the measurements, all of the evaluations from Tony. Put together your own watch list in terms of who you're looking for and what you're looking for your team to do in the draft. You can catch that all at essentiallysports.com. You'll see it right there on the homepage. Link to the draft board, and follow all of Tony's updates there.
And we will have updates probably, hopefully, end of this week. We'll have all the Big Ten scouting reports uploaded. We'll have some changes. The updated heights, weights, speeds are going to take a little bit of time. I have to get the master report, which I will eventually do, and then upload that. That's a bit of a longer process. But you will have scouting reports on about 99% of the Big Ten players that should be uploaded later this week.
Fantastic. And again, catch that all at essentiallysports.com and ask your questions. We've said it many times, and you guys have taken us up on the offer. You'll see it right there in the Tuesday newsletter on the Huddle, the special DraftCast edition, where you can ask Tony. And another big week from the mailbag. Let's start it out with what do you think the Browns will do in the quarterback and the wide receiver position?
If we're talking about the draft, I think a lot of it will be dictated as to what they do in free agency. There's talk about Malik Willis. We'll see what other moves they are. They've got a lot of draft capital, getting that extra first round pick from the Jacksonville Jaguars last year's draft class. So I would expect both of those positions to be answered within the first 3 rounds. I know that's easy to throw out there, but a lot of it's going to depend on what happens during free agency. Do they sign Malik Willis? Did they give him the money that he wants? Obviously, they made, as we talked about earlier, some moves on the offensive line, which is also a need area. They basically need 4 offensive linemen, maybe now 3 with Titus Howard being in the mix. I would say that quarterback they will address, receiver they're going to address, and they have to address the offensive line because it doesn't matter what happens at receiver or quarterback if you can't protect them.
Where do you feel Justin Fields fits in the NFL landscape right now? That was another question.
What could he go to Arizona? It's Justin Fields was another example of a quarterback that was overdrafted. We'll have to see what the Jets do. I talked about Darren Moogie openly speaking about the 2 Stanford guys, one who's with the Philadelphia Eagles right now, the other player who's with Houston, who's obviously made some moves to build up some draft capital. Listen, Justin Fields is basically a mercenary at the quarterback position. He's going to move from team to team to team with teams that need a player at the position to fill it in, as the Jets did last year. And the fact is, he's never going to live up to the expectations that the Bears had of him when they selected him with the 11th pick that year. I think it's a situation where if the Jets let him go after after all the top free agents are signed, then Justin Fields will fit in somewhere.
I wonder how much appetite he has for just being a career backup, which is almost where it seems like he's headed at this point.
Which is really what he should have been coming to the Jets. That's what he was basically with Pittsburgh, except for the few times that he started. Listen, if the money's right, I'm sure why sit in the pocket and throw bad passes and get the crap beat out of you when you can collect a nice paycheck as a backup.
All right, another question for you. Any first round prospects who ran fast but didn't look explosive in the drills?
Yeah, this is actually a really good question. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to just pare it down to first round prospects, but I'm going to look at, overall. And there were 3 receivers that really stood out to me who ran fast in the 40, but didn't translate that speed into position drills. Ran much faster than expected. Skylar Bell out of UConn runs a 4.4 in the 40. Caleb Douglas of Texas Tech runs a 4.39 in the 40. Ted Hurst of Georgia State runs a 4.42 in the 40. That was at least 1/10 faster than scouts expected them to run. But I didn't see them translate that speed into position drills. In fact, I saw them basically go slower back to their playing speed during position drills rather than the times that they put up in the 40, which were surprising. And I think that's an excellent question because there's a difference between 40 speed and football speed. And these guys showed that they have decent 40 speed, but during drills and even on film, they don't translate that speed onto the field. That is where coaching comes in. That is basically something that's tough. You've got to get those guys to play to that 40 speed. Not the first rounders that the question asked about, but there were definitely guys there, those 3 guys specifically, who ran much faster than expected and kind of made you stood up and take notice. But then when they went through the gauntlet, when they were running downfield routes, they did not play to those times.
How does that translate to a guy like Taylor Green? Put up some wow numbers, but
Uh,
didn't feel the same buzz uh, that you might expect given those numbers.
well, because he's a quarterback. I mean, who cares that he runs in the 4.3s? I
Right.
mean, and I like Taylor Green. I mean, I'm a Taylor Green fan, but he's never he's never progressed as a passer. He's an athlete and a thrower rather than a passer. You're going to draft a guy, Taylor Green, because he's a quarterback that runs that fast. I mean, you can't be running the ball. That's the concern about Lamar Jackson. He's a great athlete. Is he a good passer? That sort of play does not result in longevity of a quarterback. And I was sitting there joking with someone from Boise State who saw Green play early in his career, and he'd make one great throw, and then there were two or three where you're like, wow. I mean, people on the sidelines had to duck because they were going to get killed because he's throwing the fastball over the
Like
receiver's head.
Duke
He
LaRouche, yeah.
on the sideline. So, you know, there was no buzz about Taylor Green because he didn't throw the football well, and that's the position he plays.
Fair enough. Last question from the fan bag. This is an interesting one. Do the agents control the combine more than the NFL?
No, and I understand why that question is being asked because so many guys didn't run, didn't work out. Some guys ran the 40 and that was it. Some guys didn't do the testing, but they chose to do position drills. Most of the Miami guys, a lot of the Indiana guys didn't do testing. And the question is asked because the agent will tell the player, okay, listen, we're going to do it on your pro day. But it's a combination of things. No, I don't think that the agents control it more than the NFL. They will have say over whether the players work out. But as we talked about, the last podcast, I'm surprised that agents haven't asked for appearance fees for these guys because the combine is reliant on a Fernando Mendoza throwing, although we haven't seen top-rated quarterbacks throw in years. You want to see some of the top. You want to see a Jordan Tyson workout, although he's injured, and that's a concern. Some of the other guys that didn't work out, I don't think the agents control it per se. I think go back to what I talked about. All these players are going through medicals, which is the most important part of the combine. I've heard of maybe one or two players in the history of the combine who refused to do medicals at the combine, and that's the most important part.
Going back to Kenyon Sadiq, Tony, where do you see him landing?
Obviously, he's going to go earlier than most people thought. I think we thought prior to the combine, he's a bottom third of round one type of guy. Could he end up in the top 15? Absolutely. I mean, teams that you got to consider: Kansas City at 9, Travis Kelce at the end of his career, and the fact that the tight end position is so important to Andy Reid. I'm sure he'd love to have an athletic guy like that who he could work with. You look at Cincinnati at number 10, Mike Gesicki is in the option. The team has an option on Mike Gesicki's contract right now. Cincinnati's always looking for ways to save a few bucks. I think Sadiq would be in the conversation there. The Dolphins at 11. They don't have a new coaching staff, but they don't have an explosive playmaking tight end that can get down the field. They had to play against Rob Gronkowski all those years in the AFC East. So I think if there's going to be early spots for Sadiq in the draft, you got to look at Kansas City at 9. You got to look 9, 10, 11. Kansas City, Cincinnati, and the Miami Dolphins.
How much do the Dolphins? How much does it factor in them getting their quarterback situation figured out?
Well,
ahead
I
of the
mean,
draft.
you're thinking, well, that's assuming they have their quarterback situation figured out for 2026. I mean, I don't think it's going to affect it all that much. I think that there are so many holes on that team in the secondary, on the offensive line, that tight end, maybe receiver, depending on what happens. I don't think that they're going to bypass a guy like Kenyon Sadiq because of the quarterback position. Again, go back to what I wrote on Essentially Sports before the combine began. I mean, their quarterback in 2026 could be Quinn Ewers. It could be a situation where they don't have enough money to sign a Malik Willis. They go with a Quinn Ewers. They bring in a backup if a guy they can get like Jimmy Garoppolo, if that's an option. And then they give Quinn Ewers a chance to prove himself in 2026. And if he can't, they look to the 2027 draft to get their quarterback.
Makes sense as usual. Good insight, great insight, and listen, great coverage. You and Stephanie Otey did fantastic work from the combine. You guys made a great duo on camera, and just all the information you got us from Indy. Catch that all at Essentially Sports on all our social platforms. Get the podcast wherever you get your favorite podcast. Like and subscribe to us on YouTube, and we'll be back with another edition of the DraftCast next week. A couple of check our socials. Some potential guests coming up in the next couple weeks, and we'll solidify that as the weeks go on, and we'll see you right back next week here on the ES DraftCast. Tony, thanks for coming on. Glad you're back in New York, and we'll talk to you next week.
Look forward to it. Hope everyone enjoyed the combine coverage. And listen, right around the bend is Pro Day. So Pro Day take place, I believe, starting March 10th. So that's going to be a lot of fun as well.
Can't wait. We'll talk to y'all next week.